Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Sullivan. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Iota Services. We're a commercialisation entity owned by South East Water, and really pleased to have you in this discussion around beyond metering. Metering's a really hot topic right now for a lot of water utilities. Many utilities are embarking or have embarked on a digital metering proof of concept or project over the past 5 years. Some digital metering projects go back even 15 years in some networks, but I think it's fair to say that they've really become front and centre in the industry's estimations of how it will digitally transform. We have gathered here together a fantastic panel of representatives of water utilities from across Australia, and this panel discussion is really to explore what the industry is doing at the moment, where it's heading, and how it's thinking about digital metering. And the provocative topic really here is around what more can we do other than digitise a business process that already exists, which is taking consumption metering data. In the example of South East Water, the costs to get the data out of the meters and through an NB-IoT network is roughly the same as what it would cost to send out a meter reader every quarter. So I think that's a kind of an interesting stat when you look at how these business cases stack up. Clearly, there needs to be more value than just getting consumption data for a lot of utilities. I will just say that the representatives we have here on the panel do represent the kind of larger urban utilities across Australia, so there will be a particular perspective that comes from that, and many of our regional colleagues are already quite well progressed in their digital metering journey, and many have already put out tens of thousands of meters. So this very much is an urban perspective, and but we hope that it does apply to many other water utilities, and there's something that everyone can potentially get out of this. So without any further ado, I will introduce our panellists. We will commence our panel discussion. We'll then leave enough time for questions, and the panel will do their best to address those questions, and then we'll have a short wrap-up, which should get us there. So again, thank you all for your participation. There's been a lot of participants here, and I do hope that we are able to ask your question. So I will just commence with our first panellist, and this is Adrian Flather. Adrian is the Senior Intelligent Networks and Asset Specialist from City West Water. You can just put your hand up there, Adrian. Thank you. And we've got Natasha Ogonowski. Natasha's the Section Manager, Customer Networks from Water Corporation over in WA. Hi, Natasha. We've got Craig Earl, who is the Head of Operational Technology at Sydney Water. And rounding out the panel is Andrew Forster-Knight from our very own South East Water. Andrew is currently the Acting Customer Service Delivery General Manager, but is very much responsible in managing our operational technology systems and networks. Thanks, Andrew. So thank you, panellists. So I might just kick off with a first question, if I may, and then I'll ask one of you to volunteer to answer that question, and then we'll just go around the panel. So the first question is, what are the desired outcomes out of digital metering that your organisation is seeking, and what do you see as some of the barriers for your organisation to go from a trial, more of a proof of concept, through to a larger scale out?
I'll offer my opinions first there. So for City West Water, I guess the key drivers, water savings is a really large driver for us, particularly considering climate change, and we're experiencing and set to experience significant growth through our area and what will soon to be the Greater Western Water Service area through the Western Growth Corridor. Also believe there's a growing customer expectation for utilities to get up to speed with other service providers that they engage with. In terms of barrier for large-scale deployment, I guess that when it comes to the crunch, the business case is a very challenging one to be able to deliver these services at no or very low cost to customers. And I don't think that the scale of business change or business transformation that's required to do this successfully can't be underestimated. So some thoughts there.
Yeah, so I think that business case is a really important one, Adrian, and I think it's fair to say that there's quite a lot of water utilities struggling with how to scale that out, whilst maintaining our promises to keep bills down for our customers and customer affordability.
It's interesting. I think that in the West, the Water Corporation's probably a little bit unique in that we cover the whole state, and the business case for digital meters in the region has been NPV positive for 10, 15 years now, and that's predominantly driven by the cost and the meter reading cost saving. I guess to bring it back to a metro setting, it needs to deliver much more than that. So kind of picking up on the previous comments, absolutely it needs to be enhanced customer outcomes from a behavioural change, but also from a leakage perspective. There's also the enhanced asset performance network type opportunities. And on the business case, if we knew all of the answers, I guess none of us would be doing proof of concepts and trials. I think most of our proof of concepts and trials are all around improving our level of confidence, not only in the cost, but those holistic end-to-end benefits. So we're spending a lot of time on those use case hypotheses to make sure that we really capture the value, and we have that high level of confidence in what will be, a very large business case for us, the Water Corp, as I'm sure it will be for other utilities.
And for Sydney Water's point of view, Dan, certainly customer behavioural change is key for us. What we found in the recent drought, seems a while ago now with the recent floods in Sydney, but we found from the data we collected from customers that almost half of our population in Sydney didn't believe that Sydney was in a drought. 2/3 of the community already thought they were using as little water as possible. And 1/5 of people didn't think their efforts to save water would impact the drought at all. So there's a real opportunity to drive customer behaviour with digital meters. Probably something that's unique to Sydney Water is an opportunity that we have in Western Sydney. I'm sure most people locally in Australia will be aware of the big development out in the western part of Sydney where we're building a second airport and a second city out there. And there's a real drive from our stakeholders in New South Wales government to develop a smart city. So all the technology that we want to put in the infrastructure to build that city needs to be digital and it needs to be smart. And we see metering as just being one component of that to position Sydney Water as a key player through Western Sydney. So there's a real opportunity there.
It is disappointing that the residential customers do forget the drought so quickly. So I think that's a really good point.
For South East Water, sort of our key drivers came down to our strategy about empowering customers with data, but also trying to build smart water and wastewater networks. So that was our sort of underpinning strategy. We also had some really strong feedback from our customer outcomes, which came from our sort of in-depth engagement with customers, that they wanted to be warned and informed, and they also wanted us to get the basics right, amongst some other key things there. We felt that digital meters was the way to unlock all of that value, and so there was no other project that really touched on all of those customer outcomes. So that was really one of the sort of strategic drivers for us. So, and as Natasha said, it is going to be a lot more than that. It's about network intelligence and things, but at this stage, focusing on the meters is a big enough proposition.
So we talked a bit about proof of concepts and needing them to be comfortable, particularly for the business case, but are there proof of concepts that are taking place to understand some key technologies as well? I did hear from someone overseas once remarking on the digital metering landscape in Australia and being quite mystified at the multitude of different approaches that are existing in Australia around the comms decisions, the types of meters, sensors in the meters, platforms, quite sophisticated analytical platforms rather than just head-end systems. Is there possibly a bit of decision-making that needs to happen around technology as well?
Yeah, I'll jump in there if you like, Dan, unless that was a question to someone in particular, but I'd certainly from...
No, please jump in.
Yeah, certainly from Sydney Water's point of view, I guess our digital metering started from a multi-level integrated meter point of view, just looking at opportunities in our high-level apartments across the city. We've got, I think it's about, team tell me about 77,000 MLIM devices installed across some of our CBD areas. But the opportunity with IoT networks was a real key driver for metering for us as well. And we started on that journey as a proof of concept, as a pilot about 4 or 5 years ago now. And metering was an early identified use case that will give real benefit to Sydney Water. There were others as well, but we're using the Internet of Things technology, things like the networks like NB-IoT as much as LoRaWAN, as technology enablers to get us some positioning across digital metering. So that was a key driver that we're hoping to give us real benefit down the track. But there's obviously limitations because the IoT world is still evolving and there's still some maturity required from a technology point of view, but also from device and sensor technology as well. So we're doing our best to push industry and to push the marketplace towards really robust, reliable solutions that we can operationalise for our customers internally.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, Craig, about looking at solutions that enable you to do more than just digital metering, and it's not just the meter itself, it's the whole network, and sometimes even goes further back into the business itself around what business processes can we automate and what is our target state when we go through that kind of digital journey. So I'd be interested to hear from some others on how that's all playing into the thinking, both at that tactical level around metering, but also, that larger picture around digital transformation.
I think Craig touched on a really interesting point there of mentioning technologies as enablers, and certainly we entered our proof of concept trials with a very technical capability focus. What we realised is there's actually, while they're all maturing, there is a lot of fit-for-purpose solutions either coming or present at the moment, which was quite impressive. A lot of the technologies operated at or exceeded our expectations. But we also really realised that you need to understand the problem you're trying to solve, very importantly, and understand your customer and business requirements that will enable you to solve that problem, and the technology that will be able to enable or underpin that will be available as a solution. That was a really key learning of ours through the proof of concept trial. But yes, definitely the different IoT comms technologies, they all have their pros and cons, but certainly all performed very well.
I think we're all taking a similar approach, and it's that data-driven innovation that's really driving our digital metering programs. And we're all, and just to concur with what we just heard, I mean, that's why we're all starting at that use case hypothesis. So what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And then that then derives the data that you need, and you almost reverse engineer it then back to what IoT device or digital meter do you need, at what frequency to provide the data to help you solve that problem and unlock and unlock the value. So I think there's a lot of consistency, but as much as we call it digital metering, I mean, it's a data-driven innovation that is fueling all of our programs.
And Dan, back to your original point as to are we sort of overcomplicating it? I think it goes back to the strategy. If you wanted to do pure metering and AMI, that technology exists and has done for a long time. If your strategy is to do IoT, then you need to look at other things that can be broader than that, whether it's in your wastewater network, water quality, etc. And in the case of the standards that sort of we adhered to, we wanted to be able to control a fleet of devices in the same manner. So whether that was digital meters or whether it was sewer monitors, whatever it may be, just having that consistency and open standards. So once you sort of go down that path that you're in for a true IoT network, you sort of have to make these decisions on emerging technologies, and that's where there's a little bit of complexity, but there's a few that are emerging that look like they're the long-term stayers in this market.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, just one more comment. I really agree with what you're saying there, Andrew. I think what we've found from a technology point of view, we're still only half baking the cake, if you like. The real opportunity is analytics as a level across all the work we're doing with this technology. And I know Sydney Water, we're quite advanced in our proof of concepts, in our pilots, but we aren't quite there yet with our data analytics platform tool across the top of what we're doing in the pilot. And for me, that's the next opportunity that can really complete the picture of what we're trying to achieve in driving customer behaviours, better operational outcomes, positioning in a smart city, for really just to complete it for us.
I'm really interested in the nexus between, I guess, the technology, which is absolutely an enabler and should be secondary to the business need. I'm also really interested in that as a nexus with the people and the culture of the water organisation, and so that ability to be able to find that problem and work across the business to create what's the data we need to help address this issue, and then how do we then get that data into the business, whether that's through meters or SCADA or even external data from BOM or social media feeds, etc. So do you feel, panellists, that the organisation has the right focus and settings around and a culture to be able to help define those challenges? Because metering is quite a specific use case that's well known and I think quite well understood.
Look, I think there's certainly the buy-in across the stakeholders. I think that the challenge we all face is biting off more than we can chew. So, we all have a really long library of IoT use cases. But how do you, what multi-criteria, I guess, do you use to prioritise and kind of get some runs in the board, particularly as we're kind of, all that data needs to come into that foundational data analytic environment. Then obviously you then need a library of digital metering algorithms that you can run over it and connect in, through a customer platform. So, we have, as I said, a very long list of IoT use cases. The difficulty is prioritising, and setting the pilots up for success.
And Dan, if I could just follow on from Natasha, it's definitely a project or a group of systems that can't be done in isolation from the rest of the business. So even if you're collecting all this data, so we've got a lot of data at the moment coming into cloud and things like that, we're still a long way away from operationalising that data so that it's action in the field for every bit of intelligence that we get. So that's sort of the next step. So you can collect it all, and I think we're all getting to that point now. It's really the analytics piece, but even the outcomes of the analytics, they need to be actionable for operators or for people running a network operations centre, for example. So for me, that's the next step.
Or even our customers. I mean, they obviously need to get that data in a timely manner. If you're trying to change their behaviours with regards to, using their retic in any given week, or if they've got a leak and a like. It's there is some trialling and some testing that we need to do to make sure that we truly do empower our customers so that they get a better outcome, and we really can not influence their behaviours once, but lock in that behavioural change.
And again, from Sydney Waters' point, sorry, I did it again.
Yeah, sorry, go Craig.
No, I'll just say from Sydney Waters' perspective, we've got a real excited board, an executive who are really pushing hard for digital metering, quite impatiently on some of us. I get tapped on the shoulder every time I walk past, but there's a real expectation that we're going to move forward towards digital metering in the near future. We conducted a staff trial where we actually put digital meters on 175 staff properties, and we just share the stories from the learnings from those staff trials across the Yammer pages and the Sydney Water social media pages. And so there's a real genuine excitement and expectation to get learnings and benefits. So you see that reflected in just the discussions across the organisation, from the Customer Contact Centre, the metering team, the billing team, to really drive forwards with this. So there's real enthusiasm there.
I guess from City West Water's perspective, look, definitely it's no doubt that data is at the heart of a lot of everything we'll be doing going forward, and there's a strong desire to understand how to leverage that data better to create better data-driven decisions. So we've got a very maturing data and analytics platform that currently is very focused on, I guess, more historic or batch processing type data, but we're certainly swinging our attention now to that more real-time data. As the panel said, it's quite a complex series of systems that's required that need to integrate quite effectively to actually get that outcome, because obviously the value is only there when you're getting that actionable outcome, when you're enhancing your decision making in the business. That's when you're gaining that true value. So I guess that's what we're all trying to unlock here, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've seen just how Southeast Water's culture has adapted to getting smart meter data in, where we used to get our information on a quarterly basis. We now get the overnight dumps from our meters, and the information that's coming off from that is causing groups of people to get together in the business that previously may not have talked to each other to say, well, what does this mean now? What if we've got 10% of our customers with leaks? How are we going to deal with that? Because even if it's on their side of the meter, it's still our problem in the end, because we own the customer relationship and they're going to expect us to help them solve it. So I'm really interested in, and that's creating that urgency, I think, and moving from a pretty more of a reactive organisation to someone or an organisation that can help really get into people's lives and help them solve some of their problems. So that's probably the next segue into my next question, which is, beyond metering is not just about the data you gather from the meter, it's what's the impact on your customer as well. So if we could just talk a bit about experiences people have had with how those programs are impacting customers and what the interaction is with the businesses, and any really interesting innovations or experiments that water utilities are doing.
I love the customer side leakage because it's a win-win. It's a win for the utility because you're obviously conserving water, and it's a win for the customer because they're ultimately saving money on their bill. In 2018, we kicked off a very advanced water use study called Home, and through Home, we've been able to, with confidence, calculate that 8.4 gigalitres is lost per annum across Greater Perth on the customer side of the meter. 5.5 gigalitres of that is commercially recoverable. So we know the size of the price. We also know that those invisible leaks that you can't see, you can't hear, sometimes they go for the full billing cycle. So it's only once our meter reader then walks past the property in a couple of months' time that it's detected, and by that stage our customers have gone into bill shock. So I think it's one of the huge benefits from digital metering is shortening that period of time in which that that leak occurs on the customer side, and then wrapping your business processes around them so that the customer is identified and you're giving them all of the advice, and as I said, you're wrapping your processes around them to help them to resolve the issue in a much quicker time than what has traditionally happened.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with Natasha. Certainly our trials to date, the leak notification component of it has been very successful. We've just come off the back of some pretty deep customer surveys of our trial participants. The leak notification's very well received. I think we're similar to the other Melbourne metros in we're sitting at about 70% of leaks that we believe we've identified that we've notified customers have been repaired within a week. So absolutely, Natasha, that customer experience there is absolutely unarguable. The other very interesting aspect, obviously, that we've talked about is customer behaviour change, and that has the potential to have a much more sizable impact on the business case, so something we're all extremely interested in. Again, off the back of our surveys, we got some very strong feedback on customer interest in the data, but I think the real key here to drive behaviour change is not just present the data to customers and expect them to self-serve and change their behaviour. This is an opportunity, I guess, digital metering and this digital journey that we're on is an opportunity to interact with our customers on a completely new level, and also allow our customers to interact with water on a completely new level. And nailing that digital engagement, I guess, providing perhaps neighbourhood comparisons or some guided insights into how customers can save water, potentially other value adds like water quality within their particular neighbourhood. I think that's when you can start to impact real behaviour change. And ultimately, I think it's about gaining the trust of your customer through that channel and engagement.
Personalising, sorry, Craig. It's personalising that data feed, but it's also making best use of other data sets over and above just those from digital metering. So, we all have geospatial data sets. We know the size of the land. There's amazing urban monitor CSIRO data set, which is a photogrammetry data set. Well, we now, for every household in Perth Peel, we know the size of their green irrigated outside a house. So we can run automated calculations around irrigation intensity of that space, and we can truly provide that personalised data for what water use is comparative to a household with a similar occupancy on a similar block and with a similar green space. And I think that's how you really kind of engage with your customers and help them to use water more wisely.
What we've noticed on our staff trial is that you have to be fairly unique to work for Sydney Water. You need to be a water nerd. Yeah, and people get very excited about little water savings because they work for Sydney Water. I think the key here is how do we make customers care and how are our meters relevant and useful for their household usage. We need to give them a reason to engage. Yeah, we need to be able to provide the ability to forecast bills, display usage savings, provide online advice, real-time advice to them, and even to enable gamification that can potentially link to billing and other opportunities. Imagine if we could encourage our customers to use their water on a hot day. That's when you're going to get real buy-in for customers as opposed to stop using your water. If we can get to that point, we've got a real genuine connection point and a real win with our customers, I believe.
Yeah, Craig, just following on for that, I couldn't agree more. That I was going to have a similar point there, that a lot of the customers may have interest initially, but that will die off pretty quickly. And even the most engaged people, it's probably lucky to get 10% of your people that will actually look at this data on their own on an ongoing basis. So it's really about that demand reduction. It's got to be driven by those real-time notifications, by exception when the valid information is ready for the customer. They don't want to get spammed with everything, but equally, they might not ever log into a portal or a graph of their water usage. But if you give them a notification saying you've reached your limit that you've set of $100 a month or whatever the case may be, that's how we see that the engagement is really going to get driven.
So we've got a challenge in Western Sydney where the urbanisation of that greenfield area is going to result, once it's built up, in a 10-degree temperature increase in that general area, yeah? So we need to look at ways of cooling down that city. So we've got to find a way, whether it's through recycled water or lower water usage, to be able to encourage water use on those hot days to draw it down. So I think metering is only going to be a part of that, but there's a real opportunity from the consumption rate, from the leak detection rate to gather that information to drive that change, which can really transform, I think, customer experience. So,
And again, this is where you bring in your BOM data set. So we've spent a lot of time looking at the amount of water that could be saved for switch off for a rain event. And if they switched off on the day of, or if it's a significant enough rain event, or it happens the intensity over multiple days if they switch off for a longer duration. So I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's getting that relationship with your customer around adaptive demand management. So working with us to conserve water when nature provides it, so we can provide more in those really hot days or extended periods that we experience on the West. And again, that's the power of these advanced data analytics environments that we're all building, and the use of and the power of aggregating together all of these big data sets together with the data that we collect through digital metering. And if you're on kind of an irrigation routine, such as we are in the West, then that direct messaging, that personalised messaging to those households so that they can help us, as I said, conserve water when nature provides it, so that we can provide more to them on those kind of 40+ degree weeks that we experience over here in summer.
Can I make one more point, Dan? I know I'm talking a lot, but I think another real customer opportunity is to look at one interaction point for the customer between the utilities. So we're obviously talking today in a water context, but there's a real opportunity to look at a multi-utility solution that digital metering provides, so that the customers have one interaction. They don't have to open up their electricity app, their gas app, and their water app to see what's happening in the utility space. But again, what a game changer it could be if there was just one point of call for all those interactions to really drive customer behaviour. So that's something we're exploring as well with other parties and partners in the Western Sydney model also.
There's a regional Victorian utility, I'm not going to remember their name, Iota might know it, that already has that already has combined utilities onto a singular app.
Crazy.
Yeah, I know Southeast Water has that in our Akarevo development, actually. Andrew, do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, just quickly, it's, I guess, a really water-efficient estate that we've sort of co-developed there, but it's all three utilities in a sort of single pane of glass interface for the customers so that they can see those nexuses of electricity versus water and things like that and make decisions. At this stage, it's a relatively small scale, but if that's successful, that's something we'll also look to roll.
Excellent. I guess this has got me thinking about demand management and reduction and that value that a lot of people see in their business case. Are any of the panelists exploring how different tariff structures could be brought in as a direct result of getting that more real-time data about consumption and then being able to respond to, you know, weather conditions more quickly and inform customers to drive that different behaviour?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting one. It's almost a bit of a dirty word, tariff reform, but look, obviously at the moment, certainly for Victoria, water's cheap, so that is one of the bigger challenges around driving customer behaviour change. That the usage costs are relatively cheap. Certainly, digital metering is a massive enabler in being able to leverage reformed tariff structure to drive far higher degrees of behaviour change. I understand Sydney Water is recently or about to have recently had a tariff reform that is an interesting one. Is that right?
You're throwing to me. I can't speak to the detail of that, but I know it's something that we're looking at. I haven't been across it just recently, but maybe I can get back to you with some comments on that at a later date.
No, my understanding
but it is a real opportunity.
My understanding around the Sydney model is that it's Sydney-wide. Once the combined water resources go below a certain level, everyone's price increases, and when it rises above a deadband, everyone's prices reduce. So it's that classic demand management.
And even in the absence of tariff reform, I equally wasn't going to respond to that because it's kind of the question you don't normally respond to. It's that ability to be doing the bill predictor. So even if they kept within their current tariffs, and communicating direct with that customer, if you keep using water at the rate that you are, it's highly probable that you're going to jump into the next band and that by the end of the billing cycle, you're going to enter into bill shock. You need to adjust your behaviours now. So I think there's even things that we can do within our existing tariff structures as we start to look at some of those customer use cases where you bring the bill predictor and the customer behavioural change together, and then over and above that, or obviously further tariff reform, will provide additional advantages.
I might just switch gear from a discussion that, and this is very typical in water businesses, we tend to focus on residential customers, but I'd like to switch gear to our commercial customers, which are, as important to us, given we are a customer-centric organisation. So what are the panellists thinking at the moment around how they will manage the water consumption of the commercial customers and provide the same, if not greater level of service for their commercial customers?
I can go if you like, Dan. So yeah, look, at South East Water, ultimately all our meters will become digitised, so all sizes, which includes all our large industrial and commercial. For them, it's a different paradigm to a certain degree, but it's about finding abnormal usage. So it's not necessarily looking at baseline flows and things because they may be 24/7 businesses, for example. So it's finding those abnormalities. So you need to do a bit of analytics over the top to really help them out there. You can also help them do water management plans with the insights you can get, sort of giving them granular data, say 5-minute data, which we've done in the past, has been really impactful for them. And the plan at this stage is we're going to give them highly tailored customer portals. Again, we don't expect them to be logging in there every day and managing it that way, but the exceptions that we notify them of, that's what's really going to drive that engagement.
At the Water Corp, we've got quite a mature water efficiency management plan program with our non-residential customers. We've got over 250 data loggers that have been installed for some time on those customers that use more than 20,000 kilolitres per annum. And it's embedded with a high level of, obviously, customer engagement. So in 2018-19, that saved 9.6 gigalitres of water for that reporting year. Wow. And since 2007, when the WEMP program was first set up, it's estimated that we've saved 102.4 gigalitres through that program. So there are certainly immense opportunities there. And and as I said, it's that combination of the data loggers and a very targeted customer engagement strategy that we have in place with all of those non-residential customers.
Yeah, for Sydney Water, we're looking at the a new rollout of our top 160 largest meters. That's over 150 millimetres in size. We're looking to provide better insight and cost benefits for those customers. But what we found, it's a whole lot more level of complication than rolling out in a residential piece. And we're really looking to industry to drive opportunity there and marketplace to really drive innovation to help us through that level of complexity there. But we've already seen, just in some of our retrofits that we've put on, real savings for some of our commercial customers where previously with their mechanical meters that weren't scaled correctly, that there was billing mistakes, so that we've been able to fix up there and provide real savings back, monetary savings as much as water savings to our commercial customers as well. But we're really looking to work hard in that space over the next 12 months.
And for City West Water, not so progressed in that space. Certainly understand that there's huge potential there. There's potentially some massive water savings to be had in comparison to domestic. Also know that for our top users, say our top 50, a lot of those customers have already put in their own internal logging system because they're obviously quite keen to understand their water usage and save money. So that's an interesting challenge of itself. As Andrew said, the problem is different to what we're doing in residential. Also, the different segments of the non-residential customers make each one potentially a unique problem. I do see certainly for City West Water, we've got quite a large trade waste customer base. So metering on the other side potentially. There's some huge potential for digital metering and further network intelligence for trade waste, billing, monitoring and compliance, definitely.
I think you're on mute, Dan.
Yeah, Dan, we still can't hear you.
Apologies, Natasha. I was just saying that we will probably go into question time now to give our listeners the opportunity to ask some questions. So I've got a few here that I'll kick off with, if you don't mind. So lots of customer benefits that have all been pointed out. What about reductions in operational costs and in particular asset maintenance costs for the utility? Can you expand on these, please? Andrew, I can go.
Yeah, look, there's a couple of big ones. Obviously, non-revenue water, trying to reduce that's a big aspect of the business case. So that's at a really high level. If you can balance your zone flows against the digital meters, you can actually be quite sure if there's a major leak in the network. I think for at least at South East Water, we see apart from analytics, which are going to get you so far, I think you need sensors down at a more granular level, and that's what we've invested in, obviously, to have sensors built into the meters that can detect issues on the utility side as opposed to the customer side. So the use of vibration and pressure sensors built into the meters, I think that's a future for South East Water, because that has the potential to really change our business models as to how we react to those leaks. So as everyone knows now, that the way it happens, a customer sees a leak, calls it in, and that progresses from there. So that experience, we really want to flip on its head if we can, and we believe the only way to do that is to have that deep sensor technology throughout your network.
Yeah, and that'd be exactly the same sentiment for Sydney Water, non-revenue water, to look at leak detection. I think the challenge for us that we're exploring at the moment is what is that right balance of consumption meters versus vibration or pressure meters in the street. We know we don't need everything in the one, but what is that right amount? And I think analytics, again, will help us to drive that to the correct, allocation, I suppose.
We're doing some really interesting, research into the use of smart network live models in some of our pressured metered areas and simulating dropping pressure during the kind of midnight to 3 a.m. type period, the impact that has on the customer, but importantly, obviously the impact that has on the operation of our asset. So I think we're doing a lot of experimenting and trialing in there around the network use cases, but wholeheartedly agree. It's in addition to digital meters, there's additional IoT sensors that you need to deploy within those pressured metered areas. Whether the same opportunities exist in district metered areas or some of those larger water zones. I guess that's what a number of our network use cases are oriented towards.
Yeah, look, and I think there's definitely an opportunity in the planning and potential deferral of CapEx space of the more accurately you can understand the flows and demands on your network, the more accurately you can obviously plan for new infrastructure and renewals and therefore size them. So if you can defer a large renewal or capital project by a year or two, there could be extremely large savings to be had. Again, though, to get to that point where you're seeing those savings, you need to have probably a pretty full fleet of both digital meters and network side sensors and intelligence to get that real live model.
Yeah, absolutely, Adrian. And it's interesting as I talk to people about, non-revenue water and trying to capture the water that our customers leak out, and they say they're not from the water business. Why do you spend so much time and effort reducing your revenue? And really, it's about flipping it and saying, well, it's actually more important. It's a good thing to do, and our customers really appreciate it. But what we're trying to do is reduce our cost base over the long term, and that's through offsetting those augmentations or capital projects, and that has a bigger impact necessarily than just reducing the revenue a little bit. There's a question here. Does the panel see value in time of day based charging to aid pressure management, leak minimisation and maximising effectiveness of environmental garden use? And I think there's an interesting element here around internal house use as well as kind of external usage, and being able to differentiate between that and why people are using it at what different parts of the day. Does anyone have any comments around any initial kind of assumptions around that or theories?
I mean, if you look at the diurnal pattern that we have during the irrigation window, so in the west we have 2 peaks. So the biggest peak is kind of that 5, 6, 7 a.m. and it's largely driven by people using their retic systems. And then you get a second smaller peak around 6, 7 o'clock as people get home, and use of irrigation systems is very high there. I guess the challenge that you have there is that, our climate is changing, it's getting drier and hotter, and whilst our customers have a level of expectation with regards to livability and the level of amenity, water is obviously a key contributor for keeping things green and which presents network challenges in itself.
And Dan, I think you just really need to incentivise the customers to do that. We need some really good use cases for the customer. And on the electricity side, I think the drivers are a little bit stronger than the water side for time of day usage as it currently stands. But who knows in the future?
Yeah, agreed as well. And I think an additional challenge for the water industry is, whilst we obviously try to design our assets as as small as we can get away with, we do need to design for those 1 in 50, 1 in 100 storm events for sewer, say, another consideration. So also for City West Water, we're a very flat area, so pressure management not such a big issue for us, but I think it almost falls back to that tariff question as well. I agree with Andrew there. It's about incentivising the customers to get that behaviour change that we're after.
All right, I've got a question here about commercial water efficiencies. Is this an IoT play rather than a classic control systems play? Many process industries have their water usage managed by their SCADA. Are you seeing this moving towards IoT?
Yeah, I think I'll jump into. Sorry, Dan.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the question, but please, if you go for it, Craig.
Well, what we've found is we see our IoT technology as complementing our SCADA technology. Our SCADA is obviously a monitoring and control environment, and needs to be very robust, needs to be very secure. It's foundational. What we are doing in Sydney Water is using our IoT technology to give us more eyes and ears in the upper reaches of our infrastructure. So that will always complement SCADA, but there'll always be a differential between the two as well, just from a security point of view. So for our commercial customers, there's real opportunity in the IoT space just to give us additional visibility of what's happening at the meter, but it will always be complementary to SCADA.
And We've taken a similar approach at the Water Corporation.
I always say it gives us the opportunity to get high volume, low cost devices to complement our low volume, high cost devices, and that's where we get the benefit.
Excellent. Probably got time for one or two more questions. So there's one that's come through about, really great to hear the expectations about what can be achieved through data. In the experience of this person, the experience in working with utilities, there's a shift required to make use of that data and build capabilities around the new data sets. What are the transformation plans, programs to adapt this change?
Yeah, I'll answer that. I think, yeah, we touched on this earlier. I think that's absolutely spot on. And as I said, City West is going through quite a data and analytics transformation piece at the moment, and we're at exactly that point where the systems have been put in place, and we're working very strongly towards a self-service data model where data sets are made available broadly to the business. And that's certainly taken place, but it's about the capability uplift that's now required. So we're certainly looking at ways to enable that through, one, bring on board more talent, but also providing a buddy system through the data and analytics teams throughout the business to identify high-value use cases, prioritise them, and then have a buddy to progress that use case and also upskill the subject matter expert within business units at the same time. The ideal is to, we want to end up having champions spread across the business that are both subject matter experts and reasonable level data and analytics competency. But I think absolutely that's a big challenge that we're all trying to get to grips with.
Yeah, and that's a real opportunity internally for us as well. But I guess from the Sydney Water point of view, we're also looking to bring that partnership and that collaboration across local councils, across local government agencies and state government agencies, and also partnering with local universities as well, just to really get front and centre of innovation, which again comes back to the opportunity for us in the Western Sydney, as we want to be a key enabler for that smart city there, and exploring at things like what can we add to from a spatial view, what can we add to from a digital twin point of view, as well as we expand above building frameworks for digital engineering. How can we bring this data into that space to give us the additional learnings? That's kind of our next step of evolution at the moment we're building on.
And Adrian touched on the sort of capabilities and things. So in the recent years, South East Water's invested in data scientists. So we're probably at least 5 in the business that I can think of that are spread throughout the business, but they're the ones that are really crunching the data, albeit they may not know the context of the data, but that's not a bad thing, because they're bringing out insights that we can sort of glean and then try to operationalise later. So that's been a big uplift that we've invested in.
And Natasha, do you have a comment, or should I move on to probably fit one last question?
I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, it's, extracting the information from the data creates the value, and enhancing access to that data is critical to unleashing its full potential. So, I think we've all invested heavily in data engineers and data scientists, and we're all at different points, I guess, on that transformation journey. But I mean, the end point is 100% to enhance access to that data, because that's the only way that we're really going to unleash the full potential of the amazing data sets that we're collecting. Yeah.
And I think, Andrew, you raised a really good point around context as well. So a lot of the data scientists that I've seen come into the business, they don't have a background in water, and you're saying that's probably a good thing, but how do we get people together from across the business? So you've got customer people, assets people, data scientists, planners, get them all around looking at looking at a particular data or model and to help solve a problem. I think that's really that cultural shift that I know that we've challenging at South East Water.
And I think that's the role of the data translator. So it's that true rich insight generation. You really need that data translator to work with your data scientists, because as you're saying, I mean, that provides the context.
Yeah. Now, we did hear the magic term of digital twins brought up before, and it wouldn't be a digital webinar without talking about digital twins. So there is a question around that. And I'm going to bring it home with that question and then just wrap up briefly. But the question is, what are water utilities doing with digital twins to improve data democratisation and analysis? So a few words there.
Well, I guess since I put $1 in the swear jar for saying digital twins, I probably should answer that first, Dan. Should I? I guess what we're looking to do is collaborate.
Craig.
Yeah, and is we're looking to collaborate and just put a DSA in place, a data sharing agreement. That's why we're working in Sydney Water with the local councils, with local industry, with local universities, just to be willing to share the data that we have to get the benefit that drives back home to our customers and to our city to improve the environment and the lived experience of our customers. So the simple answer is we're opening up the data as much as we can to share learnings and to share knowledge across key stakeholders in a government space, particularly, that drives back as a benefit to a person in the street.
Fantastic.
The $1 in the jar.
Dan, at South East Water, like we're still in our infancy and sort of trying to find a place, because digital twin can mean different things to different people. I think it's got application in the treatment plant world, where you're sort of bringing to life 3D representations and then running simulations offline, if you like, or with real-time data feeds. For digital metering, yes, we've got a digital twin, but it's a little bit overrated, I think, in that space for the metering and IoT side. It's nothing different really to what we've been doing in the SCADA world for decades in terms of mimicking the physical world, if you like. But I think there will be applications in the future where you can run these simulations and scenarios. We're not at that point yet, but that's probably where we want to get to.
I guess I used an example of a research and development project that is being run through the customer networks team at the moment with some of these live network models within our PMAs, and it's doing exactly that. I mean, it's simulating dropping pressure overnight and looking at the impact that has within the PMA on the customer. How that can help your OC. So I think we're equally quite early on in the journey in that space.
Yeah, I agree very much with the panelists, particularly Andrew there. We've had SCADA for many years. One interpretation of digital twin is exactly that. And there is many definitions of digital twin. I think absolutely the simulation aspect is where the power is going to be unleashed going forward. And outside of the typical sort of real-time uses, I think the integration of proper BIM into proper digital engineering systems, as over time they're embedded into our business, will definitely accelerate a broader digital twinning of our systems and networks.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, I'd really like to thank our panellists who've, I think, been extremely candid with the journey that their organisations are on, and I think each of them comes at it from a slightly different perspective, some more technical than others and some more customer driven than others, but I think it does give the audience a really good flavour of some of the challenges and opportunities that these particular water utilities see about moving forward with digital metering, but beyond that, the IoT journey, the digital transformation journey, and the impact that has on our customers, on our employees, and potentially also our stakeholders and regulators. And it is a very complex and evolving space, and I think it would be hard to argue that we're more at the beginning than at the end of this journey, but I think it's a very exciting future for for our water utilities in terms of adopting these new technologies and the opportunities to transform our businesses as a result. So I'd really like to thank you all and thank all of the participants that have joined up to listen to the panellists, and look forward to any additional questions that may come. We can forward on if they're addressed to anyone in particular. But once again, thank you for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.